Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. All right, here we are. We're recording. We're live. I'm excited. And it's not just that Red Bull that I've been sipping on just now, but I'm actually excited. This is someone I've been wanting to talk to for a long time. We've had to, schedule changes, and they finally lined up. The stars have aligned, and I am talking to a thought leader, a collaborator, a conversationalist, an idea generator. Like that alone is enough, but she's also an expert in the ways of marketing communications, but in a certain aspect of human behavior, psychology, what incentivizes people, what makes them take action, whether it's, a civic engagement or purchasing a product or making a new decision. Can't wait to talk to her, Director of Marketing and Brand at Expensify, Joni Wang. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Casey, it's great to be here.
Man, so you're here and I'm excited. I can't wait to learn from you. So I want to pass you this thing. It's heavy, but I know you got it. Ugh. Okay, here you go. Got it?
Grabbed it.
Nice. This is a strong grip you got there. Holy moly.
Thank
Thor,
you.
better watch out. So take Thor's hammer, smash for me some kind of myth, bogus strategy, misconception, set the record straight once and for all.
Yeah. I think that people fear this idea of being a generalist because there is an insinuation that it is good to be good at everything is to be good at nothing. Right. And so I kind of flip that around and I challenge that by saying, a generalist is someone who specializes in something over and over and over again, and they're able to connect the dots each step of the way.
Yes, connect the dots. What would be the opposite? A specialist, I suppose, is the...
Yeah, definitely. Like someone, so when we think about, how we hire and build out our marketing team, I think it's pretty typical and traditional to see, you have one SEO person or a team of SEO experts, right? You have a team for paid, you have a team for organic search, you have a team for advertising. And even within each of those teams, there's one specific role, right? There's one specific role for email marketing and things like this. And so, when early on in my career, when I was job searching, I noticed this trend. And, my thought was always like, I'll take this job and I'll probably be here for a year or two at most. But I can't expect to constantly, have email marketing or something, for example, to change over and over and constantly, right? At some point, there's a diminishing returns of expertise or specialization. And so, I've always been in the belief and I've always looked for opportunities that allowed employees, individuals like myself, expand beyond that initial entry point and be able to look beyond just like the KPIs assigned to that specific function, such as email marketing. And nothing against email marketing, to be very clear, just as an example.
Right. You got all the people who are about to send on their hate mail.
Yeah, right. Exactly what I want.
Right. No, but so this is interesting because my brain, I'm trying to process it. We're saying generalists are good, but we're not only were we saying that, but is it sounding like you actually start out as a specialist? Like, so generalist is actually even better than being a specialist in an area.
Yeah. The way I think about it is that I think the common misconception that I've come to understand is that generalists are people are like, oh yeah, I've done a little bit of this. I've done a little bit of that. And so it's like, that's kind of the common misconception, right? And so when people are looking for experts, that's why they, in job descriptions, they're saying, I want you to have 5 to 7 years in social media or whatever that is, right? But at some point it's like, okay, I know the landscape, I can keep up with the changes that are happening, as the culture evolves, but is this it? Like what else is there? And so you reach a point of diminishing returns where you're like, okay, I've become an expert at this. And so what now? Do I become, I go from an associate to I don't know, like a manager to a VP to a director, like whatever that order is. And then it's like, that's all there is, right? But imagine if that person was, like most people are, smart enough to understand the nuances of social media, to be able to, enact and apply all those changes and, make your brand part of the conversation and bring it there. And like, imagine what else they could do, right? Imagine if you gave them the opportunity to learn about email marketing or SEO and jump into those different sections. I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you find smart people, anybody can become a specialist anything if you spend the time and care into learning about that craft, right? And you can always apply it, over and over to different mediums and different, what do you call them? Segments.
Yeah.
And the more you do that, the more you basically become a generalist. A generalist is just someone who's specialized over and over and over again.
I feel like I want to call you the general, right? Because you're like totally
I'll take it.
dominating this term. And now I feel like I should like redo your intro and be like the general of generalists. And we're going to explain why that is so cool. See, now it makes sense to me. It's actually the connections that are power beyond just the
Yes.
specialties. Okay, you have a specialty. And I was thinking about you mentioning like someone who just keeps getting more and more specialized. It's like, well, you don't need 20 years of Twitter, right?
Right.
I'm a social media guru. I've been on Twitter for like I've been studying only Twitter for 20 years. That's like you might want to branch out a little bit, check out a little Instagram while you're at it, because you don't just want to be like so locked into one, because then you miss the trends, the changes. It's like having someone who's so locked into, hey, I'm a direct mail person. I do billboards. That's all I do. Billboards. It's like, okay, well, there's a few other things that have happened in the last 40 years that you should be aware of. And it's the interconnection of all those things that has so much more power. That's really interesting.
Absolutely.
It's also, sorry, I'm going to say it's also the opposite of school. I feel like school, it's like, get your doctorate. You want to get your doctorate in like at signs on Twitter. It's like it gets so specialized, whereas almost in business, it's like the opposite way. It's really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, like, even thinking about the way that you do this podcast, for example, right? There are so many podcasts out there that, have a certain amount of shelf life because they're only focused on one specific thing. But you're able to, balance the line between specificity so that it hits the type of people who are interested in marketing, but you're broad and general enough that you are talking about all these different topics that will hopefully ultimately help out your listeners, regardless of if they are in one specific role or not. Because the goal here, I'm thinking based on my conversations with you, is to just expose people, teach them new things, and have them apply it to whatever they're working on today.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I want to learn too. And you're right. Bring in the specialists. It was interesting because I was writing a book on marketing automation. There was a particular section on, say, like testing or AdWords or a particular topic. And it's like, let's bring in a specialist from that topic and learn from them. And then the generalist just becomes that much stronger because we can work with other people on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with that.
When you started out, did you start out with any particular specialty?
Well, I got my degree, speaking of school, I got my degree in international relations. And so I'm, completely away from that. But I think what I found out, so I graduated when it was really tough to find jobs, that like no one was hiring. And so I realized that the only thing people would hire me for was for writing. And the only reason why I had developed that specialization was because I had written pages and pages and pages of papers defending this argument, that thesis and whatnot. And so that became my first specialization, I would say, and I was able to get, jobs in and internships in editing, in event planning, and once I went into event planning, that kind of opened the funnel for my next specialization, right? Really understanding like the logistics and the even the high level strategy of what that looks like. From there, event planning is a lot of networking and people development or people connections, right? Making connections and networking and all that stuff. And from there, I kind of jumped into a job for sales and business development. And, because that's just relationship management. And so, my career has basically, now that I've never really looked at it through this lens, but my career has basically been cultivating these different skills because it's just what I'm interested in, right? Like I think humans are very versatile, and it's not like you're only interested in marketing or you're only interested in one thing. There's so many different things that connect with each other. And so that's just kind of how I've approached my career. And I think all of those things have, effectively helped me think about marketing in a different way versus if I had, learned marketing in college and just focused on that throughout my career.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that sort of path. And maybe this is something that because I feel like I was just talking about this with a friend as well. The idea that it was almost like I was doing an A/B test to find out what my passion might be. you know, so I'm sort of in this marketing bubble and there's a lot of different to-dos, but I'm trying to take on a bunch of different things, trying to find out is that something I can be passionate about? Is that something I'm being passionate about? And then eventually something clicks and you're like, whoa, and then you go crazy on that. But then maybe eventually you got it, and then the adventure is not there because you've learned that, you know, maybe the 80% that you need to know. So then you start testing other aspects. But maybe marketing is one of those things where you can do that. It's not like finance is testing a new way of doing accounting. You know, it's like accrual
Yeah.
or it's cash, and you cannot invent your own system. You know, or sales,
Yeah.
you're following a script or something. But marketing, we can kind of innovate wherever we feel like it.
Yeah, and definitely, I think that's I love the flexibility of that because it's something about the industry as well, right? Sure, there are certain ways and like traditions that people follow and ways of working, but because marketing in and of itself is such a creative pursuit, I think people are and tend to be a little bit more flexible there. And there is there's also a low barrier to entry, right? Like if you exist as a human, then it's very easy to just be someone who is reading a lot, to writing a lot,
Yeah.
interacting and talking to people and so on. And so it's very different than when you're trying to learn a very specialized skill, like, if you wanted to be an investment banker, right? Because you take the time to invest in that skill and then they just want you to do it over and over and over and over and over again.
Right. I can't do that.
Me neither.
I, I need some variety. I think that's why lead sources themselves can be fantastic because you're like, let's try a new one and see what
Yeah,
happens. You know,
yeah,
we got
exactly.
our go-tos, but we also want to try out some new ones.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what one of the things I often think about from a generalist perspective, it's not just about the individual, your skill set, but it's also like, how do you tie all these things together, right? Because the more you understand how different sections of your business work, the more likely you're able to come up with interesting, exciting plans or ideas that not just knock out your current goal, but like maybe help solve other problems that other people are facing as well. At Expensify, we take this generalist mindset kind of across the entire organization, right? So even though I'm like the director of marketing and strategy, I also I'm very heavily involved in our diversity, inclusion, and equity efforts. I'm heavily
Cool.
involved in our hiring efforts. I'm interested in our product and I help test it. And I've even created my first product edition this past year. So and all of that helps inform like, how do I best serve my customer and how do I best help, like, how do I understand what they need? And so that we can build it and so that we can help them understand what our value add is.
Yeah, I love how you said that. How do I best serve my customer? You know, and to do that, you need to understand them and you need to talk to them and be in front of them. What was that like diving into the product world?
Honestly, it was really fun in a very different way. Um, I think one thing that is, I guess for me, like marketing is not interesting because it's marketing. It's interesting because it helps you understand the psychology of how people think, what
Mm,
drives them to action, and how they change their behavior over time after seeing certain things, both positive and negative, right? And so product
right.
is kind of an offshoot of that because you're thinking about how they behave because you give them, a screen or an app and you're like, from a human perspective, like where do they click first? What do their eyes draw to? How is this as easy for me as it is for someone who's never seen this before, right? Because I'm spending hours and hours looking at this one thing. So it's very easy and obvious to me. But
Right.
if I were to show you something new that you've never seen before, you might be like, Joni, I have no idea what you're talking about here. I have no idea how to use this app. And so really it kind of provided a different perspective to this idea of like, how do people take action? How do they make the choices that they make?
Right. Did you ever have one of those things where you like watch people click around and they would tell you what they're thinking or any of that?
No, we don't do that. But
I had like a job early on. It was like, you know, you're in college and they're like, you know, we'll give you $50. It was like Excite, one of those like web search engines that like doesn't exist anymore.
yeah.
Kids, you know, back in the day, there was these Ask Jeeves was cool, you know, it was like one of those. And they're like $50, we have a new product. We want to come click around and just tell us what you think. And they had me just sit in their office and like they're like, okay, go search something or go do this and just tell us what you're thinking. And I'm like, oh, I'm thinking this, or I don't know where to click next. And and they were just sitting there like watching me. And, I guess I never really thought about what you're describing, how product is all about behavior, because you could put a button on the side and just call it a day, but you want people to use it.
Yeah. And you think about like, that's when you get into color, you get into
Yeah.
copy and micro copy, like things that surprise and delight people. And, we don't think about that sometimes as marketing. We think about it as like product, right? But the reality is like, if you can add these kinds of surprise and delight moments in the product, that is a way to, get people excited and loving and using your product. And that creates kind of like this bottom up word of mouth enthusiasm amongst your user base, your customers.
Yeah. Surprise and delight. That's really cool. I guess I kind of had put, product in that box of being like the weird coder folks that are just like, but you're
Yeah,
right.
that's
Like,
what I'm not doing, by the way.
right.
It's more like product management and design, but yeah.
True. I guess there are always those folks, but, and I used to be one, so I can make fun of them, but like, there's always that level, but there's also the UI level, the understanding of what clicks. Have you always been fascinated with psychology, and what, have you done any experiments with your marketing to sort of
Yeah, I think I've
get
always
that
been
out of them?
fascinated
Yeah.
because I recognize what a consumer I am, right? The aha moment came to me when I lived in San Francisco a couple years ago, and my partner and I were driving down the street, and I like made some comment like, "Oh, the Coca-Cola polar bear ads are back," or something like this, right? Because they come out every year around the holidays. And maybe 5 minutes later, we were driving, I was like, I'm really thirsty. Maybe I'll get a Coke. And my partner laughed at me. He was like, "Do you know what just happened?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "You just got that advertisement worked." And when he pointed that out, I was like, "Oh my God, you're right." And so I think and so I started thinking, I'm like, wow, that really worked. Ads work. Like, but how and why? How frequently? There's all these questions that started popping into my head. And that's kind of what started that interest for me. Because, I started thinking about then, okay, well, I'm not really that unique in the sense that we all have tendencies like this, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So how do other people think? Is it similar? What are the different ways? And so that's kind of what got my interest. That's how I started thinking along that line, I guess.
Wow. Wow. I love the mystery of that. And it's always cool. By the way, Coca-Cola, you're welcome. There's a little ROI on your marketing campaign, that
Yeah, right.
billboard,
This is not a Coca-Cola podcast.
yeah, that $20,000 billboard. Here's here's your dollar ROI on that. But maybe it happened a million times more. So yeah, isn't that weird? It's just so interesting. It does work. Ads do work. What's your take on bad ads? Are they bad? Are we just not the target audience? Are there just a lot of companies putting out bad ads, or are they just targeted to I hope they're just targeted to the wrong people. What's your take?
Well, maybe I have a question for you. What's a bad ad you've seen?
Well, okay, Super Bowl. There's
Uh-huh.
always these ads where you're like, whoa, that's awesome. They're gonna be talking about it tomorrow. And then there's ads where you're like, really? You spent $1 million on that?
Yeah. Well, I guess you can fall into one of two camps, right? You can be on the side of, no press is bad press.
Right.
Generally, there's certainly, exceptions to that. But I think maybe actually you brought up the Super Bowl. What's really interesting is I think this past year there was that big Chobani ad, right? Where I don't know if you saw
the
it.
guy playing the piano is like terrible.
Yeah, it was like the CEO playing piano, singing about how much he loves yogurt in the middle
Was that
of
Chobani? I thought that was like some Soylent thing.
I'm pretty sure it was, maybe it wasn't Chobani, but it was a yogurt.
I'm looking it up. Yeah, totally.
I was like, oh, well, now they didn't do a great job at it.
I could be wrong. See, that's funny though. We're like, oh, it's one of those like cool brands.
I'm pretty sure it was a yogurt company.
I believe you. You probably remember more than I do.
But that was one of those Super Bowl ads that had a lot of Oatly. It was Oatly, sorry, the oat milk. So he was singing about how much he loved oat milk and the benefits and all that stuff. But what was really funny about it was that you either love it or you hate it. Even internally at the company, we have a social Slack channel and people are like, cool. Did you see these ads? Whatever. And my first reaction was like, I hate this ad. Like, I don't know why they went into this direction. I don't know why they had to point out it was the CEO. Like that is a weird, maybe ego thing, and I'm sure some of those thoughts were fueled by all the really funny tweets people were putting out there.
Right.
But then there was also this other group of people that are like, man, I love this. This is cute. This is simple. This is et cetera, et cetera. And so I think it's really hard for me to be like, I don't know what I think about. I think as long as it creates conversation and it provides like additional interesting like insights into how people think, like I think then it's kind of done its job, right? And to be like fair, that ad went viral basically because it was so controversial, kind of like that, blue black dress, whatever, gold silver dress thing.
Oh my gosh, was it blue? What did you see?
I think I saw blue.
I think I saw blue too. And I can't believe there are people in the world that didn't see, like, I don't even understand that. But you're right. Like, like that one particular, that one I think was one of the best examples of what I hope is terrible on purpose. It was so bad that you like there's either two stories. One, that CEO is an egomaniac and was really like, I'm going to do this. It's going to be great. And everyone's like, yeah, sure. Or no, don't. But he did it anyways. Or it's probably some like shy guy who was like, no, I don't want to be on the ad. And they're like, no, this will be so funny and it'll be terrible. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And then everyone's like, oh, he's such an egomaniac, but you're just some humble guy that's just like, I didn't even want to do it. But you're right. We're talking about it. And it not in a bad way. Like we hate those people. They're so irresponsible. We're just like, they're so weird, but hey, so is oat milk too. So
yeah, right. And I think I ended up leaning, I think, towards the second of what you said, which is like, look, this guy must love oat milk so much that he must be like singing praises all the time that they thought like, if not him, then who can sell this better, right? So in that way, it was very interesting, like as a piece, that we talk about and examine, and we're like, would I do that? Maybe not, but it was entertaining.
Right. And I would contrast that with, because I'm sure when you were looking it up, I pulled up like the top 10 or whatever. And some of these I disagree with. Bud Light, it reminded me of this because I wouldn't have brought up the story. They had like a truck tipped over and they had a whole bunch of people, like famous people helping out. And it just felt like cameo after cameo. And then you're like, oh, okay. But like, I would totally go Oatly. Maybe they didn't have any famous people on it. They just had the CEO playing stupid piano versus like, oh, we got all these faces and look what they're, it was almost like there was more, it's more authentic almost, or it felt more genuine to have just you. You weren't trying to hire some people to make you look famous or anything. It was just you.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. And that is an interesting point that you just brought up, which is, there is maybe a humility to the way that they were advertising, right? And when we think about what sticks, I think maybe sometimes the conversation is around that or like authenticity or whatever it is, but more than just like a funny laugh, with a celebrity and stuff. Like maybe those are the moments that we should be thinking more of how we can incorporate that into our marketing.
Right. I used to always joke that like the latest Indiana Jones was terrible because like when in doubt, aliens. That's like the easiest plot to write.
Yeah.
How can you explain this hidden temple with this and this? Some mythological creature, some historical, no, aliens. Oh, okay. Well, then you can explain anything. So I was like, oh, it's so lame. It's almost like just doing a little celeb thing alone is not it for super commercials, right? Okay, you have a celebrity, like, and what, as opposed to a non-celebrity who's playing his heart out on a little mini piano.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I think maybe one of my favorite commercials, like on the flip side, I still remember, and I probably saw this when I was like a teen, right? But it was that Volkswagen commercial where there's the little kid dressed as a Jedi, and he kept like moving his hands like Darth Vader would. And then like you saw the parent like clicking, they were advertising like the auto start feature or something like that. It was so cute, it was so endearing, and it was so like warm, right? And that's like the type of stuff I remember, like it's still one of my favorite like ads when I asked or when I think about that.
Right. And that had me thinking about I think for this latest Super Bowl there was, see, now I'm forgetting. That's the challenge. If it's so good, can it be tied to the brand? But it was something like IBM or someone, they had the swimmer who was like a, not a paraplegic, but I think she was missing her legs. Do you remember
Yeah,
that one? Oh, there
I
it
think
is.
so.
Toyota.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, if I didn't have, I had some Dorito chips in my eyes, and my eyes were a little watery after that one. Like,
Oh
like
man.
it was powerful. I don't know why, but and it was a Toyota. I don't know what the connection. Does it have to have a connection? What do you think? Can they just told a really good story and then they're like Toyota? It,
Yeah.
I was
You
kind
know,
of conflicted.
car brands are really interesting in how they market.
Yeah.
But when you said Toyota, I was like, it reminds me of the Audi commercial a couple years ago with the girl, like the dad is pushing her on like a go-kart that they made together down a hill. And it
Oh,
was about it was a little bit about like, what do you call it? Like extending the future for your like female like children like girls so that
okay.
they can train to become engineers and
Oh,
um
I see it. Right.
like that, right? Sorry, I didn't really explain that well, but but it kind of reminds me where you're like, what is the feature? Is it just at that point you're just the brand itself is so well known that they are now advertising on their brand values, right? Or advertising on the feeling that they want you to have as you drive your Toyota. And that's kind of, that's kind of what I think when I think about that Olympian one, I think, or swimmer
Yeah.
one that you mentioned, right? Because it's the same thing. It's like there might be some, I've noticed that like as car brands, especially, there might be some like metaphor for the athlete or the person that is in the film, but also to like maybe one of their features. But really, it's about like the physical beauty of it, right? Between the car and the person doing the thing, and then it's about like what's the feeling they want you to have when you're driving their vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I typically rag on car commercials because it's like the same car in a closed circuit, and I like could give a shit about it. Like,
Yeah.
stop doing that formula. I hate it. But so here I am complaining, and then Toyota's like, okay, cool, no car in a closed circuit, and then I rag on it again. So maybe they can't win, but you're right. At least they gave us something other than just the car. It's about the people
Yeah.
in them. And but that also the whether it should tie in or not, it just got me thinking about Dan Levy just kidnapping M&Ms, and at least you've got a person, but you got a cool story. It's funny, and
Yeah.
he's kidnapping M&Ms. He's like, I'm gonna eat you, and he's like,
Yeah.
no. So I don't
And
know. There's just
him, like I
yeah,
think those are when celebrity commercials work, is like when it kind of feels authentic to who they are and their
yeah,
brand based on like how they exist, right? Dan
right.
Levy's a really funny guy, and I remember that commercial is so funny. There's just like something about it that feels very natural. It's like, yeah, of course he would be kidnapping an M&M or
Yes,
whatever.
that's totally it, right? You like you don't even need to describe it. You're like Dan Levy in a room with an M&M, and he's kidnapped him. You're like, yeah, plausible.
Checks
Yeah,
out.
yeah, it checks out. I see. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
And it's funny without even having dialogue. That's how you know it's like a good setup where you're like, oh gosh, what's he gonna say to him? I don't know. You gotta
Yeah.
check it out. Yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
interesting. Do you get a chance to do? I mean, how do you approach advertising? Do you get a chance to do it at where you're at now? I mean, there's all the big commercials, and then I mean, how do you do it at a smaller scale?
Commercials? Do commercials
Yeah.
at a skill?
Yeah, or just can anyone touch on these? I mean, it's so fun. It's like pure creative energy. How do you get that into just any random company you're at, or like how do you pull that in?
Yeah, definitely. I think as a tie back to sort of this generalist idea we started this
Yeah,
conversation with, I think one of the things is like you should look for ideas anywhere, right? Just because someone is an engineer or a designer doesn't mean that they aren't also a consumer, and they might have interesting ideas or interesting examples or at least directions to help you like kind of brainstorm and mesh all of that together, right? Because ultimately
yeah,
it's the marketer's job to figure that out. But I think that one of the things that, obviously there are certain production costs that you can't really avoid. They certainly can scale up or down depending on the vibe that you want to give out. So, if
yeah,
you are a scrappy startup and you want to do something a little bit homemade looking, that might not be such a bad idea, right? Or
right,
maybe even if you're a Fortune 500 and you want to give a certain feeling to a certain brand, like you can certainly pursue that too, right? I think a lot of what is hard is just when you get into the logistics of, you know, dealing with SAG actors or actors or, you know, parties. You deal with all the different production needs and things if you've never done that before, right? But that is the beauty of I think the generalist model, because you can hire those people, right? You can hire the people who decide that they only want to be specialists. And because you as a generalist, you generally understand the concepts. And if you don't, you can learn it really quickly. The key skill of the generalist is that you can pick things up really quickly and deep dive into it whenever you need to, right? And so those are the qualities and skills I think that you know, when you're building your team, like you should look for. And so when you're building a commercial, it's the same thing, right? Like, are the people that I'm surrounding myself with thinking about both the larger picture and the individual, like the smaller logistics of how to actually execute this plan? And so anybody can create like a YouTube video and put it up there. It's just, you have to think about what is the value add? What are you trying to have a conversation about, right? There's so many people out there who are just creating content, you know, not very expensively. There's so many YouTube, you know, influencers and things like that who don't necessarily need a big budget for a lot of these things. And so I definitely think it's possible for companies to do that, but you just have to really get creative and decide, again, like, what is the content you want to put out? Is video the right medium? How do I reach my audience? You know, because it might differ depending if you want the YouTube or the Instagram, or if you want to go broadcast or streaming, or maybe you decide you just want to do audio and, you know, create a podcast. Whichever way you decide to go, you really kind of have to meet your audience where they are.
Yeah, meet them where they're at. You know, hearing that from you tells me you know what you're talking about. So many people are creating content for content's sake, and I think our friends over at Uberflip are saying like 87% of all content doesn't get consumed. That's a big number. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, the activation of the content's half the problem, you know, or getting it into people's eyeballs. And like, it's not enough just to write the thing or paint the thing or videotape it. People have to actually see it too.
Yeah.
And you need to meet them where they're at and
Yeah.
make it for them, not necessarily for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why, you know, something like TikTok has just gone off like on the deep end in terms of popularity, and it just blew up because people are making content for themselves. And then you can really just literally copy the video, put your own face, put your own spin to the dance. And it's like everyone's kind of creating a dance together, right?
Yeah.
And so and so like there is a meanness, but then there is also an aspect of like me being part of the community, and my excitement to contribute to that community, right?
Yeah.
But if we're talking about more traditional video or content in general, you're absolutely right in that it's like, hey, what do we want to do with this, right? Because if we want people to care, we have to think more deeply about what they care about and what they want to talk about and what they want to spend their time thinking about, and then figure out a way to join that conversation.
You have like 50 sound bites already so far. Like, you know, our producer, shout out to Alexis, she's amazing, but like, I don't know what we're gonna do because there's just so many powerful points here. Yeah, all of that. My next question for you is really around, I mean, you're a marketing leader. What keeps you up at night? What are the challenges that keep you thinking about things? And maybe you sleep just fine, but you know, metaphorically speaking, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I am a very deep sleeper. So, you know, got that checked off.
Check.
I think for me, what keeps me up at night is I think a lot about how I want to, you know, build and retain the team that we already have. I think that the people that you surround yourself with and the people that you know, have the same values, want to work in the same ways, is one of the most important ingredients to how you work and the product that you produce, right? And honestly, how much fun you have, because, you know, we're all spending like what, our 9 to 5s, some people even longer, at work, and that's a significant aspect of our life. And so if we want to we can slog it away and we can just be like, let's separate work from personal. But the reality is that, especially as we're working all from home, it's really difficult, right? And so one of the things I think about is like, how do I have fun at work, and how do I keep myself engaged, and then extrapolate that. And it's like, how do other people, want to have fun or connect with each other? And how do they stay engaged? How do they stay excited about the work that they're doing? And maybe there's an element of it connects to their personal goals and hobbies, right? Maybe they can add a little bit of that into what they're doing every day. So for me, like, I just love working on, like, I don't mind if it's product or marketing or design or like whatever it is, because at the end of it, what I'm excited about is figuring out how people make decisions, right? So it's a very easy length for me. But I guess what keeps me up is like, we have all these really talented teammates, and we have all these people, we've spent so much time chatting with them, talking with them, working with them. Pre-COVID, we at Expensify, we have this, I guess it's a perk, but really what we do is once a year for 1 month, we'll take the entire team, whoever wants to go, to work abroad for a month, right? And because we're an internet company,
What?
all we need is a good internet connection. And so that is really like something that people love, because we have employees all over the world. We're incredibly remote friendly. Certainly we have, major offices in big cities, but this is the time when I can sit down and like go grab a random lunch with a bunch of our engineers and success coaches and things like that. And we can just riff about our personal lives, and it naturally weaves into work. And, all of a sudden we're up at like 10:30 at night trying to put together this awesome plan that we just came up with, right? And, it might mean that we might take a swim in the afternoon because that's the perfect time in Thailand to take a swim with the sun is just right. But there's a balance there, and there's a fun and energy and creativity. And so if we can continue to how do we continue to deliver on these things for our team to make them feel like this is a place they want to be, that, is inclusive of their, different backgrounds and needs and things like that, like, then that would be for me the most successful thing. And so that's why it keeps me up at night, because even if it is not a reactionary, like I need to put this fire out problem because a bunch of people are leaving, I think it is a consistent effort that leaders have to pay attention to in order to continue doing the high level work that you want to put out.
Man, that is so powerful. It reminds me of a book by Dan Sullivan, Who Not How. It's the who, it's the people. It's not, oh, how do I do this? It's like, who do I have that's a specialist? Back to your point, who do I have that has a great answer for this particular challenge? Or let's all get together and as a who, we'll come up with what the answer is with all of our talents and strengths. Man, but what, tell me more about this. I think people are like, wait, tell me more about this. A month abroad, are they paying for like room and board, or you just can work from wherever? Are you all like deciding, let's go work in Thailand? And tell me more.
So when I started at this company, I've been here for almost 7 years this July, but when I started, we were about 35 people. And so we basically, our people ops team would be like, hey, let's go to, I think my first one was Portugal. So it was like, hey, we're going to go to Portugal. And, we would basically, anybody who's excited to propose a location would propose it. And then we would have a voting, like we would have a top 3, and then we would vote for the top. And so, and then we would, basically there's a range of people, right? Like at the time, there's a lot of young people, there's older people with families, like, so it's really hard to just coordinate something for everyone. So we're like, hey, listen, you can expense the flight, you can expense like your lunches when you're working, and dinners and coffees and things like that. You take care of accommodation for the first 3 weeks. And then for the 4th week, we'll take care of accommodation and we'll make it really, really nice, right? So just like something very special. I think actually it was the 3rd week, not the 4th week. So when we were in Portugal, the company rented out like an old castle or monastery, I think. And we just like stayed there it was like this little town in north of Porto. And it was awesome. Like there was no way I would have ever gone there on my own, but you contrast that with today, or the last one we went on was, we went to Vietnam in 2019, right before COVID hit in 2020. And, because it's a much larger scale, we're much more family friendly. Anybody, you can bring your partner or your entire family for the entire time if you want. But we also specifically have the 3rd week as like what we call fancy week, right? But really it's the friends and not friends, but the family week. You will put on activities for your friends. Sorry, I keep saying friends, but your family.
Sure.
And so like, while we're all working poolside or wherever we are and having meetings and one-on-ones and coding and all that, like my boyfriend's like out there making pasta with all these other plus ones, you know,
That's
and learning
awesome.
how to, you know, learning how to make banh mi's and things like that. And so,
Wow.
and exploring the ruins. And so not only are we like creating that community within our own employees, but also a separate community, separate and also inclusive community of our partners, because we recognize that this is the larger like family that we care about, and that we want to make sure everyone is getting the benefits of like what it means to be an employee here, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, and so, you know, we've done Thailand and Cambodia, we've done Italy. That was really cool.
Where in Italy?
We did Perugia, which is like a
Wow.
university town. So we never try to hit up the major cities because you can do that on the weekends. And we also want like, we basically try to look for the sweet spot between small enough that you'll run into each other in town, but big enough that there's enough restaurants, cafes, and a good internet, right? Essentially.
Right.
But yeah, our philosophy is always, it just has to have good internet. It has to have a lower cost of living than San Francisco, which is not difficult to find.
Everywhere.
Yeah, right. And then the last one is a beach. We love a beach week,
Has
right?
to
So
be a
let's
beach.
make sure there's a beach somewhere. But yeah, it's one of those amazing like opportunities that you just really don't get, because when am I going to go to Perugia? I'll go to Milan, I'll go to Rome, I'll go to all these places eventually, but Perugia probably would have never crossed my mind. And so it was really awesome. We did that, Alghero, and then the third week we stayed at a like little, I don't know what you call it, like a villa resort called Borgo Ignacio, which they kept telling us that that's where Justin Timberlake and Jessica Biel got married. And we're like, cool. I guess that's really, really cool, right?
Now you're there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's just, yeah, there's like things like that that are just the things that we do to make sure that everyone loves being here. And, you know, for what it's worth, this is probably the longest job I've ever had, definitely the longest job I've ever had. And I'm not really ever really thinking about, you know, what's my next move, because I have everything that I would want in a career here. And, you know, yeah.
Hell yeah. You can clip this yourself. This is a hell of a recruiting video.
Yeah, right. And
Expensify. Is your team, are you looking for anyone on your team?
We are always looking for software engineers.
Okay.
I will say that. I don't know the exacts of everything else, but we're always hiring for software engineers.
What about marketing?
I don't think we've hired for marketing for like 2 years now.
Because no one leaves. It's so good.
Yeah, no one leaves, and marketing is one of those things a lot of people get excited about. So if someone from another team has an idea, it's like, yeah, go for it. You know, you do you, dude. Yeah. So yeah, never a shortage in marketing, honestly.
You know, the idea that appeals to me hearing that, you're right. It's like your extended work family is the idea of walking into the main area of the village or whatever you're visiting, like going into sort of the common area to get something for breakfast or coffee or something. And you see some of your coworkers, you know, it's almost like what it should be, where you're in a big company, instead of hardly ever seeing each other, you kind of collide randomly and have those cool conversations with different people.
Yeah. One of the things we talk about, you know, when we're doing interviews, because anyone can join any interview. So I can sit on engineering, design, whatever. But one of the things we think about when we're assessing like if they're a culture fit, if a candidate is a culture fit, is like, would I enjoy being stuck sitting next to next to them on a plane, or you know, our train's like severely delayed and we have to wait here for a couple hours with this person? Is that okay? And that's like a very, you know, it's like, are they interesting? Are they cool people to talk to? Like, it's a very low bar, right? But that's kind of, I guess, part of just how we think about the type of, I don't know, team, community, whatever that we want to be.
Amazing. You should have a wait list. You should literally create a landing page for marketing jobs at your company and make like a wait list, and then give me the URL. We'll put it in the show notes. People can just be like, oh man, let's get on the wait list for this thing. Sounds great.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's great little PR campaign too right there. Hey, nobody's left for years. I'm not planning on leaving. Come on, get on the list. We'll let you know. It's a 2-year wait.
Yeah, it's one of those crazy things where like we just ran some data on our internal team, and I think more than like, don't quote me on this, but I want to say more than 60% of our team has been here for more than 4 years or something like
Wow.
that. And, I was hired in a time when a bunch of people were getting hired. And
Hmm.
it's really cool to be like, I can't believe we're all still here.
Yeah.
Obviously a couple people here and there have left, but in general, it's like, they're probably the people, I tend to be closer with in the company, sure. And it's just like, wow, look, we've been here 7 years. Look at all the crazy things that have happened since then and all the things that we've been able to do and experience. And it's just been really incredible.
Yeah. And the difference between like a job like that where you can stay, where you just can plant your roots, stay and really devote yourself to it. They're loyal, you're loyal, things are getting done versus that sort of migratory. It's almost like there's all these other jobs where you're kind of migrating in and people might coming in, they're leaving, coming in, leaving. No one's really ever staying.
Yeah.
But to have a place where you can just make your home, that's really special.
Yeah. And I think I was very lucky. Like, I mentioned to you earlier that when I graduated college, it was really difficult to find a job.
Yeah.
And I think that actually ended up being a really lucky thing for me because I essentially I could only really get internships. So I could try a bunch of different things,
Mm,
explore a couple of different companies and culture. Like company culture was not really a thing back then. You're like, you get a job, you hope you like it. You hope the people are nice and that's about it. And
right.
in the years since then, we've really started this conversation, in our society of like, culture does matter, retention does matter.
Totally.
And I was able to use all those experiences and recognize what I didn't like. And so, that's part luck, but part opportunity when I found Expensify because I was kind of prepared for it. Right. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that I'm just like, wow, sometimes negative things or what seems negative ends up being like a really positive change in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, when you zoom out, you see, oh wow, this was actually a good thing that didn't go over there because look where I'm at now. Yeah. Um, tell you what, I would love. I have this other question for you. Who are you? Who are you? Like so many cool conversations around. You are the general of generalists. You're, ma'am. How you doing? Welcome to the show. So I've learned so many things from you. Tell me, who are you? Take me back in time, like little Joni days. What was it like? Did you always know you're going to be in marketing and just dominating and having a great time creating?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was a kid, I told my mom I wanted to be an artist, and she laughed at me because it wasn't like I was particularly good at art either, to be
Right.
clear. And she's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Um, and then we just never really visited that again. Partly because when you're two, you kind of forget, you say things and you forget, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I always never know exactly what to say here. I'm a middle child. So, my older sister got to do whatever she wanted to do because she was very um, like independent. My
Yeah.
brother is the baby of the family. So everyone does whatever he wants to do. And so I kind of was the middle ground where, when my parents were working late or things like that, I would be the one to prepare dinner and make sure everyone, was doing what they needed to do or like whatever. And so I think that, when I think about the way that I don't know, grown or whatever, gone through
Yeah.
life, I think college was the first moment I was like, wow, it's just me. Like, what do I do? What do I want to do? What do I want to think about? What am I excited about? Like, how do I figure out who I am and all that fun stuff,
Yeah.
right?
You're not the middle, the first, second, third, last. You're you, and you just
Yeah,
like make some choices.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I started, sometimes because uh we were like first generation going into college,
Oh
there
wow.
wasn't a lot of guidance into what we should do or what we needed to do. So like the only reason why I created a resume was because I noticed all my friends were going to career services. I didn't figure out that there was a career services until my junior year, right? Like things like that, where it was like, it's like, and so as a result, I didn't like take internships when I probably should.
Right.
But all of those things I think was just, I think for me, I think about like, I want to prepare for because I forget whose quote this is, but it's like, luck when happens when preparation meets opportunity, right?
Mm,
And I think
hmm.
that's one of those things, like if I were to go back and like tell myself something, it would be, hey, you know, prepared enough so that you can spot the opportunities that when they present to you, right? There's some like psychology term for this, but like when you, let's say you buy a Tesla and then you all of a sudden notice everyone has a Tesla, right? There's like some psychological term. And I think that's kind of what luck feels like to me, right? So, and I used to say like, oh, I was very lucky. I got all these opportunities and this and that. But the more I reflect, I'm like, I did work really hard. Not really hard, let's be clear, but like I worked hard enough to get to where I wanted to be, because there were certain goals that I wanted to meet. And so I think that I've always been very like goal driven, because I knew what I didn't want. And so that kind of reverberated throughout, I guess, like my teens and like when I started looking for jobs and things like that. And so yeah.
Wow. Crazy. So is that the advice you would tell yourself if you could go back in time around the luck? What would you tell yourself?
I think it's if I could go back and tell like a younger version of myself something, I would
Like
say
you just graduated from school and
yeah, and it's like, hey, look, do what you need to do to prepare so that you can spot the opportunities of like what you might want to do, right? Like know yourself a little bit, know the things that you want to accomplish, or at least have a vague idea. And that way you can start seeing them as they appear to you, right? Because if you're just kind of going through the motions, or if you're just following a template, like I think a lot of people, there's an expectation you go to college, and there's an expectation you get a certain kind of job and do a certain kind of thing. And if you just kind of follow those steps, like you kind of realize, maybe a little too late, that you're not really happy where you are. And so I've been very fortunate in many circumstances such that like, I didn't have that template, which was nerve-wracking at the time, but as a result, I've been able to carve out the path that I want to be on, that I'm excited to be on, and I'm not having my quarter life crisis or whatever it is. And I imagine it's very similar for you, right? You're doing what you want to do, and you're very excited and happy to do all of those things.
Yeah, there's something to be said for people like that champion for themselves, and your advice to yourself to prepare, mentally, physically, whatever it is, so that you some things, so that you see the opportunities, but also so you're just aware to look for them, because maybe they are there. You're just not aware that there's even a category called internship where you can get paid while at school and maybe get off out of some credits and not take that other boring class instead. Like but you wouldn't know if you didn't necessarily do something a little bit extra on your own behalf for yourself, above and beyond, to go and just see and ask people however you get the information, though. But you have to champion for yourself. I had some friends in college, and as a contrast, one barely ever eventually graduated, but sold himself up into like getting an internship at like financial district in Boston, right? And as and his internship was getting paid more than some of my friends were as a job. Whereas other friends who sort of followed that template, for whatever reason, always struggled and ended up staying in the same jobs they were before they had that degree or the advanced degree, because they were thinking that maybe the system would reward them. But it really, it's there, but you need to seek it out.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Like this idea of waiting for your reward, which is very like old school to an extent, like versus kind of going out and grabbing and being proactive about what you want, right? And making sure that you're steering your ship in that direction, and with every choice that you make, even if it's not always directly there.
Yeah, like that ultimate freedom that you first got when you got to school, you could do anything you want. You can go find a nonprofit and volunteer for. You can create a company. There's a lot of things you can do.
You can slack off and just smoke weed all the time, right?
Or
like
you can do that.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that.
You can totally say that. No, yeah, this is the hardcore marketing show.
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want to say.
I figured.
Right. But yeah, that's it. You can, it's up to you, but it's like, it's your choice now. And I think, I don't know how I feel about, some colleges saying we guarantee you a job, but still it's like, that's that same template. That's a slippery slope. What are they going to guarantee you? Chick-fil-A, like you push your boundaries and find mentors and go after things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Amazing. So really, what do you do in your off time when you're not traveling to Portugal? What kind of things do you do for fun when you're not just crushing your marketing game?
We have two dogs, so they're a really great excuse to like go out. And so one of the things my partner and I love to do is we love to go backpacking, and we try to do like 1 or 2 trips every summer. And they can be like 2 nights, one night, and then we try to do a little bit longer, like 3 or more.
Wow.
But like, a couple years ago, we started this a couple years ago when we just won the lottery for the enchantments in Washington. And so, because I'm based out of Portland, Oregon,
Yeah.
and they have a lottery system because they don't want too many people to go to ruin like the environment. And so we did that, and we're like, oh my God, like there are just some places you cannot see in this world unless you spend a couple of days going through it. Like you can't just like drive there, you can't just drive through or whatever it is. And so that just kind of became like a hobby, I guess. But
Wow.
like really like something exciting and places that we can take our dogs too, right? Because not every place allows pets. So just like finding that medium and taking that excuse to go out.
I just Googled this. I'd never heard of that either. Washington enchantments. So this is
Yeah.
an example, like do a podcast, listen to a podcast, find out about these things, go to these things. The picture, the blue lake and the mountains around it, and
They have,
holy moly.
oh my gosh, it was probably one of the most because it was one of my first backpacking. It was so difficult. They had this
Yeah.
path, this area called the Asgard's Pass. Speaking of on brand for you, where you have to climb up these giant boulders, right? And if you go too early in the season, it's snowy, and if you go too late, like it's like mushy or something, right? And we just happened to get like that time when the week before all the snow melted, so there was fresh water coming down. And so even though the sun was beating up on us and like it was so hot and so tiring, we were able to like take advantage of all the things. And then you get to that top part and then you see that lake and you're like, oh my God, it was all worth it. Like I really, that was the moment when I was like, okay, hiking is cool. Like,
Yeah.
before I was like walking amongst trees, I'm not a big fan.
I
But yeah.
know what you mean. When I was hiking up Mount Rainier, I was thinking, what kind of a hobby did I choose here? This is terrible. This is really hard. But then you're right, you get to the top and you're like, this is amazing. But you get back down. I remember having my feet up, drinking Rainier beer, and was like, that was cool. I want to do that again. But with a view
Exactly.
like that, though, like amazing. I've seen pictures of this before and I never knew what it was. I just thought, wow, cool Instagram photo. But wow, that's what
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
enchantment.
it sounds like if you're based out of like the general Washington state, like that's a great place to go, even just the Cascades in general.
Cascades. But as an out of state person, you put in like a bid, to get in the lottery to go
Yeah, I think that's just in general, that's how they do it.
in
So they
general.
give you, if you are going to go through the entire thing in one day, like you don't need one, right? But those are the true, like incredibly athletic. Like, here's me climbing up with all my gear, like huffing and puffing and just walking through the trails. And then I clearly remember this. There's this woman just like jogs by, running up, and then she probably finished the whole thing in one day because there's no way she couldn't have. She just brought water and some snacks, I'm sure,
Right.
right? But it was like incredible because it's like a 15-hour thing, like through the way that we took it.
It's amazing. Sometimes those people have those little tiny water bottles too. You're
Mm.
like, what is that even? Like that's me sipping like 10 minutes into it. I've already drank that much. Like I
Yeah, like
don't
I
know
gotta
how
go
they do that.
back. I gotta refill this thing.
Yeah, yeah. Or just have one of those pumps, just keep filling it up as you go. Man, that is
Yeah,
amazing. I could see how you'd get bit by that bug of backpacking. And did you bring the dogs with you to the pass and all these places?
yeah,
Wow.
definitely. Yeah, we did, and it was really, I think actually they might have not allowed dogs in that one, but
Mm,
in general, when we do backpacking, we try to find ones that allow for them, usually more like state parks or national forests versus national parks. I think national parks are the only ones that don't allow it.
right. Okay. Man. Do you have an adventure planned coming up?
Um, I think we are going to look into a couple of places in Eastern Oregon because we went briefly last year, but there's some really cool peaks there. I think Mount Olympia, or not Mount Olympia, Olympia National Park is one that I really want to do because you can't really get to the middle unless you backpack through. But that's a
Gotcha.
much longer, like I want to say it's like a 8-day backpacking thing. And I
Mm,
don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but
right.
we'll see.
What do you think about Mount Kilimanjaro next year?
Oh my God, no.
So I'm thinking of going, and we get a whole group of people
Yeah, right.
together, you know?
Yeah, that altitude training.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm a little bit intimidated by it, but I've also heard really great things. So,
Yeah. There's
check
there's
back in
two
a couple
main
months.
routes, right? You can take the fast route, but it's like a lesson in life. If you take that route, there's a 50-50 chance for making it because it's too fast and you can get sick. But if you go like the cool route that takes 8 days on the side, there's like a 90% chance. So you gotta do the slow, consistent path, not the
Yeah,
crazy one.
I
You'll be
agree.
fine.
That's
Yeah.
how I like it, right? Enjoy the view.
Yeah, right. Don't be in such a rush to get up there and come back. Go the
Yeah.
long route.
Yeah.
It's funny. They call the long route the whiskey route, and the short route, or one of them is the whiskey route, and the short one is the Coca-Cola route. So it's almost like it makes sense. You're gonna either just drink that Coke really fast, or you're gonna just sort of like savor the whiskey as you're going up
Yeah.
the mountain.
That's so
So
funny. I've never heard that term.
yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, this has been awesome. Hey, where can people connect with you if they want to get on that waiting list or just connect with you professionally? What are some good
Yeah.
apps and places and URLs?
Yeah, for sure. I'm always open and connecting on LinkedIn. And it's just, I think it's just Joni dash Wang, or maybe
Okay.
there's no dash, I'm not sure. And then if you're, if you're interested in connecting, like, and looking for a job at Expensify, you can go to our website, we.r.expensify.com, and you'll see all our job postings. You can learn more about our company. You can learn more about the culture and what we do. And don't be afraid to reach out.
That's awesome. And reach out fast and soon and get on that list, you know. Now serving, applicant number 14, right?
Yeah.
And get on the wait list.
Yeah. Actually, now that you say it, like, we don't, even though we don't have an open position, like, some people do just apply generally and just answer the questions. And so, because sometimes roles do open up, and we'll just email
Mm,
people that we have, in the system. So that doesn't hurt either.
sweet. Message noted. We'll have to link right to that in the show notes. Anyone that's curious, that'd be fantastic. And
Yeah.
let me know where your next trip is, because that is awesome.
Yeah. Where was your favorite one? It sounds like you've done a little bit of hiking and
Ye-
backpacking and stuff too.
Yeah, yeah. What, like hiking wise, or like,
Either
yeah,
or. Yeah.
I'm really fortunate to be in New Hampshire, and I've got the White Mountains up here, and
Oh
they're like
yeah.
they're little tiny cute little ones compared to out west. Our biggest one, Mount Washington, is only 4,000,
Yeah.
and it's not an 8,000 or 14 or 12. It's not a hood. It's not one of those. But relatively speaking, it's fun, and there's some great. There's like a challenge. There's 48 peaks in New Hampshire that are above 4,000 feet.
Oh yeah.
And so it's kind of neat. I think I'm at 21 out of 48 right now. So
Is that the same as the presidential challenge?
the presidential range is along there
Oh,
too. Yeah,
okay.
for
Yeah.
sure. And
That's
the Appalachian
cool.
Trail cuts through there as well. If I had more time, I would totally do the AT. But
Yeah.
life,
But yeah,
maybe later.
exactly right. Yeah, maybe
Right.
later in life when we're a little bit more, focused
Right.
on other things.
Totally. Kick the kids out of the house. Be like, okay, dad's going hiking.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on here. This has been a
Yeah.
blast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Absolutely. And
Great.
for those
Yeah.
for those people listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes front and back over here. Share this episode with someone. Be a thought leader to one person, 2 people, 90 people. All you do is just share that information, share that message. And for those people listening, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.